Okay, so I got this riding mower here, and the wheels, they just kind of, you can see they just flop around kind of. This makes it really hard to steer, really hard to keep it going straight. Problem is that the bushings in the center here are worn out, so I'm going to go ahead and replace those today. Okay, so I got the wheel off, and now you can see the worn out bearing right here. And there's hardly any grease inside there, which is probably why it's worn out in the first place. And this is what the bearing is supposed to look like. And there's two of them, one on either side. The first step is to get the old one out. And what I have here is just, I'm using this as a punch. It's a Murray spindle, an old one. And what you want to do is, if you look down in there, you can see the edge of the bearing on the opposite side. You're going to want to tap it on one side with a hammer, and then go on the other side and just alternate until the bearing comes out. Okay, so I'm going to tap out the bearing now. Like I said, you want to tap on one side and then tap on the other side, alternating, and this will pop the bearing on the opposite side out. Okay, and you see the bearings popped out. And you can just tell just how bad it really is. And this is what it's supposed to look like. So now I'll just do the other side. Okay, I've removed both of the bearings and cleaned out what little hardened grease was left in there. Now if you'll notice, the grease fitting sticks into the wheel a little bit. And if you look at the new bearings, you'll notice there's a flat spot on one side of them. And when you go to put the new bearings in, you want to make sure that that flat spot lines up with the grease fitting. Okay, now to get the new bearing in, I'm just going to put a light coat of grease around the outside so it goes in easier. Like I said, you want to line up the grease fitting and the flat spot. I'm just going to tap it in with a hammer in this impact socket. You want the closest size to the outside diameter of the bushing. And I'm just going to tap this in with a hammer. Okay, now I've already gone ahead and put a light coat of grease on the outside of the bearing. You don't want a lot, just a little bit to make it easier to get in. I'm going to line the flat spot up with the grease fitting. I'm going to use my impact socket to tap it in. Now when you do this, you want to make sure that the inside of the socket is clean, because if it's not, when you go to hit it, it's going to drop a bunch of dirt and junk into there, and that's no good either. So I'm just going to line it up, try to get it in straight. If it doesn't go in perfectly straight at first, it's not a big deal. It should self-align as you go, the farther you go in. Now you'll know when it's in all the way, because for one, you'll see it stop moving down, and the other way is you can tell by the sound. The sound will distinctively change when you hit it once it's in all the way. Okay, now I've got my other bearing greased up and I'm ready to put it in. Now sometimes you don't have to get this flat spot lined up with the grease fitting on one side, but I'm going to just line it up anyway just in case. It's always a good idea. I'm just going to place that in there, and again, just tap it right in with my impact and a hammer. I like to give it a few taps even when I know it's in, just to make sure it's seated well. So that's about it. And go ahead and put the wheel back on. Okay, so I put both of the wheels back on, and you can see now it's pretty tight. And that's going to make a huge difference in the drivability. Now if you have a little bit of play in and out on the axle shaft, that's fine. The main thing you're looking for is that there's not a lot of play when you try to wobble it. Now the total cost for this was under $20 for 4 bearings delivered, which does the entire front end. And I'll put the part number down in the description. This is actually a Weedeater riding mower, which is basically a Craftsman with a different brand on it. This method applies to lots of different riding mowers. Like I said, it's going to make a huge difference in the drivability. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.